There is a new study that shows that daily marijuana use has exceeded daily alcohol use in America for the very first time. More people use alcohol than cannabis overall. But once you get into the numbers, it gets much more interesting. According to the study, about 17.7 million people said that they used marijuana either daily or nearly daily as of 2022. Those are the most recent figures. Back in 1992, that was less than 1 million people. That could mean a couple of things. One, it could mean usage is up, which it probably does. Two, it also could mean that people's willingness to admit their usage is up, but we only really have data for one. Back to the numbers. The study also shows that about 14.7 million Americans used alcohol daily or nearly daily. Back in 1992, that was about 9 million people. According to the survey, 42% of the people who say they've used marijuana in the last month say they do so daily or near daily. 11% of alcohol users drink daily or nearly daily. Among Americans who are ages 12 and older, about 1 in 5 have said that they use marijuana at least once in the last year. So a significant number of people, 62 million Americans, 24 U.S. states have legalized recreational marijuana in some way. The Biden administration just moved forward with rules through the U.S. Department of Justice and the Drug Enforcement Administration to change the schedule on which cannabis is found. What does that mean? The Controlled Substance Act governs all drugs in the country, all controlled substances. They are placed on one of 5 different lists called schedules, basically categories, based on their potential for abuse or dependency and the potential for harm that they might do. The lower a schedule that a drug is on, the less harm it is believed to do. Check out Schedule 5. Those are things like Robitussin. Schedule 4, that's your Xanax, your Valium, your Ambien, things like that. Schedule 3 is where the Biden administration wants for cannabis to end up. Those are things like Tylenol with codeine, ketamine, which is increasingly being used in certain experimental therapies to deal with significant mental health challenges, various anabolic steroids, and testosterone, which, I should note, are legal with a doctor's prescription. And there is a variety of reasons why doctors might prescribe it, so it's not banned outright. Schedule 2, those are things that are considered with a high potential of abuse: Vicodin, meth, cocaine, OxyContin, fentanyl, which is amazing because I don't think it's going to stay on Schedule 2 for long, considering what it's done to a lot of people in this country. Adderall and Ritalin are both Schedule 2 narcotics. Currently, cannabis is at the very top of this list. Schedule 1 narcotics. Those are defined as drugs that have no currently accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse. Heroin, LSD, ecstasy, and peyote. Marijuana is on that list. So you can understand why advocates for legalization see an enormous problem with this. Cannabis is being used medicinally under the care of doctors and researchers. There are certain populations where there is a higher potential for abuse and even some unexpected problems that we don't really see very often, but that are materializing with some people who use cannabis. But the idea that cannabis is as harmful as heroin, really? The idea that cannabis is more risky than Vicodin or OxyContin, or that cannabis is more risky than fentanyl, is obviously false. Now, let me be clear. I am not saying you should support cannabis legalization, but I am saying that this is the issue with the law that has led so many people to lose their support for cannabis-related restrictions. A grain of fentanyl will kill you. You can take 50 milligrams of cannabis and you'll be eating the ceiling tiles for a few days, but you'll be fine. Like, you'll come back to reality. Actually, you'll just be eating a pizza. You'll think it's the ceiling tiles, and then you'll come back and you'll be just fine. This is the notice in the U.S. Federal Register. The Department of Justice proposes to transfer marijuana from Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substances Act to Schedule 3 of the CSA, consistent with the view of the Department of Health and Human Services that marijuana has a currently accepted medical use, as well as HHS's views about marijuana abuse potential and level of physical or psychological dependence. This does not mean that cannabis would become fully legal nationwide. And you can see in the Federal Register notation, it makes that pretty clear. If marijuana is transferred into Schedule 3, the manufacture, distribution, dispensing, and possession of marijuana would remain subject to the applicable criminal prohibitions of the CSA. It would be a huge change, but it wouldn't just blow the doors off of marijuana regulations and allow everyone to do everything. Some people say it doesn't blow the doors open far enough. One of the regulatory ideas is a bill, the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act. It's put forth by Chuck Schumer of New York, Ron Wyden of Oregon, and Cory Booker of New Jersey. Among other things, this proposal would establish a center within the FDA to regulate it, create FDA standards for labeling the products, including, and if anyone has ever used cannabis products, you know this is a huge deal, potency, doses, servings, where it was manufactured, and how to use it. I should tell you all the very funny story of the very first time I took an edible. Tell you later. Like the video and subscribe to the channel, and maybe you can bribe me into telling you the story. Anyway, back to the news. The bill would also establish programs to prevent youth cannabis use, which is certainly essential. It would further remove cannabis from the Controlled Substances Act, not lower the classification, it would remove it. It would also get rid of federal prohibitions in states that chose to legalize cannabis. It would also create structures to help local law enforcement and the Department of Transportation to enforce those laws and so on. It's basically an extremely long laundry list of like every Democratic priority for cannabis in this country. Will this get passed? They've put this bill forward since 2022. Now it's 2024. And in this Congress, where every good idea goes to die, it seems unlikely that they'll make it now either. I don't see how the pace of progress is going to stop now, especially since most Americans, or a significant number of Americans, have already kind of voted like, we don't care. Keep it away from schools and don't, smoke and drive, and we're okay. The details, that's where it gets sticky.